So I was a weird kid. The book of Revelation always fascinated me. It scared the hell out of me, too, because of everything I was taught about it and what it meant. But the mythology, the symbolism, it captivated me on a level I did not understand until much later in my life. So it was mind blowing to me to find out as a teenager that the book of Revelation is not what most people think it is. So, Revelation has absolutely nothing to do with the current day or what they call the end times. It was written by Jewish Christians about the times they were living in. What people need to understand about early Christianity is that the Christians of the time believed that the end of the world and Christ's return was going to happen in their lifetime. I'm sure that a lot of them could accept that it'll happen a generation or two down the line. But I think most of them would not be able to conceive that the world would still keep going 2,000 years out and that the millennial kingdom hasn't arrived yet. So most of what is written there as symbolism, it is an apocalypse. But apocalypse is a literary genre, and it's a heavily encoded literary genre. And when you read Revelation properly, it's a deeply political work. It's about Roman figures, it's about what is happening at the time. And it was also written by Jewish Christians who weren't happy that Gentiles had taken on such a strong position within the faith. So when they talk about the 144,000, that number is literal. They believe there would literally be 144,000 people left after the end of the world, and that there would specifically be 144,000 Jewish Christians at the end of the world when Christ came and established his kingdom. The reason I bring this up is because I keep seeing the 144K bandied about, and I keep seeing biblical prophecy talked about in contexts where it has no business being part of the spiritual practice or beliefs of the people talking about it. Because, guys, you New Agers, you have to realize that you can talk about microchips and the Antichrist and all of that, but the people who've been preaching end times prophecy for the past 100+ years, they think that you're going to hell because you're heretics. And your rejecting that aspect of it doesn't change that you are preaching the same things and that you're adopting the same beliefs. You're just putting them in a new framework. And when I look at end times prophecy, well, I keep wondering, where did this idea that the mark of the beast would be a microchip implanted in the forehead or hand come from? Because the Bible doesn't say anything about microchips. If we're being level-headed about our reading of the text, what the mark of the beast most likely was or would have been a tattoo or a brand on the hand or forehead that would indicate this person is allowed to partake in trade in this society. So, going back to different things I've said on this channel about collective consciousness and co-creation, the way that I think psyops work, by and large, it's not even necessarily things that are planned. I think that ideas get planted within the collective psyche in order to bring them about or to create a certain level of acceptance for them when they come around. And I think that this entire edifice of end times prophecy is an extension of that. It baffles me when it comes to Christians who say that this entire society is corrupt and it's run by extremely corrupt people, but somehow their faith is the one thing that they believe has been exempt from that corruption. And they, on the one hand, think that it represents life and hope, but also they have been told that the Antichrist is inevitable and that the end of the world is inevitable. And what's going on in the Middle East? That's inevitable. In fact, we need to stay invested in the Middle East, partly to facilitate Christ's return, which means bringing the end of the world about. But also we want to fight the Antichrist. It's completely incoherent when you break it down. And if you think that it's inevitable, then it means that there will inevitably be a society where you have to plug into the machine in order to meet your basic needs, or you will starve, where you wouldn't even have cash as an option if you didn't have the microchip in your hand. And that goes against the entire nature of a co-creative reality. Prophecy is very real. Fate is real. But that doesn't mean that fate collapses all choice and all possibility. Fate gives meaning to free will. Because if you didn't have constraints on your decisions, and if you didn't have the ability to create and exercise influence within those constraints, free will wouldn't be a meaningful concept. It would just be chaotic to an extent that it would resemble complete randomness. The 144K, people talk about it like it's a vibration. And I'll concede, there are esoteric and mystic readings of biblical texts that have some grounding in reality. But I don't understand why you would want this as a vibration. I don't perceive what is in the book of Revelation as being anything that I would regard as high vibration. And when I think about the entire Christian concept of heaven or the millennial kingdom, part of the reason that I deconverted as a teenager is because I perceived heaven as being a celestial North Korea, where I would have to undergo a lobotomy in order to accept that as a kind of paradise. And I would much rather be somewhere where I'm suffering immensely, but I'm still myself, than I would submit to having my brain taken out so that I could be happy. The final note I'm going to make on this is that the Antichrist is one of the more popular beliefs that I see outside of Christianity. That there is an Antichrist, that there will be the Antichrist, when that's something else that is not supported at all by the text. The Bible talks repeatedly about Antichrist. It talks about the spirit of the Antichrist, but it never speaks of it in a singular sense. There is no single figure that is said to be the Antichrist. And if you want to know who the great beast was, look at the Roman politicians at the time that book was written, because that's what that's referring to. We give our power away to these constructs that exist in the context of faiths, that in many cases don't even understand the origins of the things they're teaching. Belief in the end times has been a constant throughout Christian history. I would go so far as to say the way that I see Christianity in its early days is that it was a heretical Jewish death cult. Heretical in the sense that it strayed from Judaism. I think that the Jews who said that Jesus wasn't their Messiah, they have a much stronger case than the Christians who were saying that Jesus was the Messiah. If he was an actual flesh and blood person, there's no reason to accept him over the many, many, many other messiahs that arose around the same time. And the conception of the Jewish Messiah was going to be someone who helped overthrow the existing order and not necessarily bring about an end to history in the sense that modern Christians think of it, but to bring about a new age, which is much closer to the pagan understanding of things, where things cycle. Like Ragnarok is the end of a world, but it's not the end of the world. So when they talk about the 1,000-year kingdom, that was supposed to be an earthly kingdom that would be ruled by and in favor of God's chosen people. That still hasn't materialized. And you want to be very careful about adopting any doctrines that tell you that you are a chosen person. I don't like that line of thinking. I don't like that line of thinking, especially when I see what it does on the mundane level. As an American, we have absolutely no business being involved in the Middle East, period. I don't care what you think about the conflict. I don't care what you think about the different sides. The main reason that we have that mess over there right now is because of dispensationalists who believe that that land is important in bringing about the apocalypse and the return of Christ. And if you think that people who believe Middle Eastern warfare is necessary to bring the return of Christ wouldn't also embrace this idea of microchips under the skin or the arrival of the Antichrist in order to bring about whatever world they envision for themselves, I don't know what to tell you. It's like, don't give your consciousness to that. Don't play into it. If you're going to read the text, if you're going to adopt an esoteric and metaphorical view, fine. But gain an understanding of it first and apply it intelligently, according to your intuition and your reason. And don't just follow these trends, because there's a lot of egregores and there's a lot of thought forms that feed upon and manipulate people through these things like the 144,000. And I'll say right now, if I end up being wrong about the 144,000, I will happily exclude myself from them, because I don't want any part in any realm or world they create. The chosen ones are insufferable and they can go off and be in their corner. I'll just go do my own thing. So if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like, leave a comment. If I'm sure y'all have your thoughts. Let me just say, if you don't like what I had to say, I still appreciate the comment. Thank you for helping me in the algorithm. If you find this video valuable, go ahead and send it off to anybody that you think would benefit from it. If you're looking for my services, coaching, writings, etc., you can find that in the links below. I look forward to seeing you guys in the